First of all, I'm sure it was a huge vote of confidence for you to be tabbed again with a big sponsored element. And I know that this has become a thing in wrestling, and I'm really happy about it. And the first time I remember seeing an integration like this was a few years ago. This was Attack of Zombies or something for The Walking Dead. But a couple years ago at WrestleMania, we had a Bray Wyatt Mountain Dew type match. Then we had the whole Slim Jim sponsorship that LA Knight won at SummerSlam. Yeah. And from what I understand, that gate for that show was like number 9 all time for wrestling in North America at $8.5 million. But folks, we discussed the business of professional wrestling on this show. The sponsorship for SummerSlam was $7 million, meaning they made almost as much money. And by the way, after you take away ticketing fees, it's even closer than that. They were within $1 million of each other. So you're talking about wrestling companies are now able to almost double the money they normally make from running a live event through these sponsored shows. So I know there was some criticism online about the creative for this. I love that you always remind us creative is subjective. I just want to remind you too, as you're getting on your high horse and dictating to everybody else what wrestling should or shouldn't be, 100% of that money went to the victims in Maui. So the ticket sales from the folks who were in Nashville and all the money that was brought in from that sponsorship for that match went to Maui. And boys and girls, if you like wrestling and you like video games, you had to enjoy that. I went into the match. I wasn't able to see it live. I had a death in the family this week, and that was a little bit chaotic. So I didn't get to see it live, but I saw it before we recorded today. But I'd seen the criticism ahead of time, Jeff, and I thought to myself, this was fun. It was a fun match. That's what it's supposed to be. Not everything is supposed to be Lou Thez and Nick Bockwinkel. It's okay if every now and again we have fun. And my takeaway from it was, I wish Jeff wasn't always the last outlaw, because if he was wearing his white Venetian blinds, that blood would have looked really cool. I'm really glad that Jeff Hardy and Karen were pros running around in their white. And I thought Jay Lethal should rock more cowboy boots. That was cool. I mean, I thought it was a fun match. I knew what it was for charity. I knew it's all going to a great cause. And I knew as soon as they announced the match and that there was a belt involved, well, Jeff's taking home the hardware. I mean, that's what you do. You stacked up Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks just 2 weeks ago. You're still the uncrowned tag team champions, and everybody knows it. But now you're the Texas Chainsaw Massacre champion. Is that on Wikipedia yet? We got to get that on Wikipedia. What's the holdup?
I was waiting for this build up because I knew you had something special. But, Conrad, well, I'll address the criticism first because that's probably what you want. But I told the guy, my buddy in the gym this morning, who I'll just say he loves – well, he loves he's not a fan. I'll describe what type of fan he is. He's not down with Lucha Libre. He says it doesn't make a lot of sense. He loves Japanese wrestling. He's not so much a fan of WWE. He just kind of likes the no-nonsense, strong style. He leans more into that. And he came up and he said, why? And now this shocked me. He's like, man, there's some people been out of shape online. What do you think about that? And I said, well, let me ask you, why do you like it? Because you're shocking me that you liked it. He said, well, when you hear the title, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Deathmatch, right out of the gate, you kind of know you're not going to be getting any hurricanranas and German suplexes and all that. But he said he kind of set the table. But then he's like, well, what do you think? And I said, the biggest disappointment I would have had by far, and I told Karen this, is if there would have been no feedback. The point that there was people that this made them so divisive, that somebody cared so much or cares so much about the AEW brand that they tune into Twitter or Instagram. And that's another point. Twitter is much more divisive and I'll call it mean-spirited than Instagram ever thought of, because you kind of read the different comments. In YouTube, that's a different audience too. But Conrad, I really thought that the sponsor, exact words, incredible, way over-delivered. Okay, so that's a win. It's my understanding across the board, the network, because they're the ones that, I guess they now have, and it's not that this is the first, and certainly it's not going to be the last, but when you build a deck and hey, we did this for this client, all that. Obviously, it goes without saying, the top man, TK, super excited. And look, his sole decision, that was up to him when the funds going to Maui. That kind of says so much to me. Yeah. But the audience being so passionate about it, I love that. Okay, that lit a nerve. Not always good. Some people just didn't like it, but I loved it. I thought it was an honor to be in that type of integration. It was definitely out of the box. I thought Jeff Hardy and his entire crew, you can say, executed it to a T.
Yes.
But when we, and I'm not a horror movie guy, but Leatherface, that clip of him walking down the aisle and throwing the chainsaw, and he was supposed to be on our side, but Sanjay got his ass kicked and Karen got ran off, and all the integration. I was, that's a nice shot right there of Karen. Just look at the images in the background, production across the board. It was a grand slam in so many ways. And for those that didn't like this kind of stuff, I will say this without question. It certainly will make you appreciate more your 4- and 5-star matches. So yes, it actually served a purpose to you as well. It will make you appreciate, hey, I don't like that integration stuff. I like this stuff. So I'm super excited that I'll just mission accomplished.
Well, here's the thing, and we've talked about this before. When I was watching wrestling with my daughter back when she was really into it, Naomi came out and she had her world title belt glowing. She had put those LED lights all around it. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe they're doing that. And then my daughter, Kansas, goes, oh my God, Dad, that's the coolest thing ever. And then it clicked for me. It was like, you know what? I'm sure my dad thought when Ted DiBiase unveiled a $sign belt, the $1 million belt, that he thought, this is just stupid. Yes. But as a kid, I was like, the $1 million belt, man, that's the coolest thing ever. So I would just say, I've learned from you, but I knew that in her context then, because I thought, I'm not going to crap on this because I recognized, hey, that's just not for me. And I've heard once upon a time that Dusty Rhodes used to make an analogy that wrestling should be like a buffet. You're not serving the same thing to every person. Like, you may skip the macaroni and cheese and go eat something else, but somebody's going to love that macaroni and cheese. So this match was, maybe if you hated it, just not for you, but that's not to say it wasn't for somebody. There is a teenager out there. There's a young person out there. There's a horror fan out there who thought it was super fun and loved it. And what I like most of all is it went for charity. Guys, we donated all the cash. And by the way, it's another great revenue stream for wrestling. Like, I don't know what the dollar figure was. And I guess I heard it, but I'm not going to say it because that's probably whatever. But the idea is that would be a substantial gate for a house show in one match. That's great for the business. That's great for it's a win for everybody.
Conrad, I'll just let you in on this. The number that's being reported online, that's why I haven't commented on it. It's way low.
I thought it was because I thought that just can't be real because we know what other folks have paid for similar stuff.
Yes, it blew me away. And like you said, the SummerSlam analogy and last year's Mania analogy. And gosh, when you kind of look at just the wrestling industry as a whole, because, and let me back way up out of that, sporting events, MMA, boxing, that's just a small part of live events. Football, basketball, baseball, and other parts of the world, soccer and cricket and all that. Well, these live events, well, guess what, folks? Wrestling is 52 weeks a year. Now that sponsor dollars are being integrated in a big, big way, because we're not trying to get into pop culture. We are a part of pop culture. It's just going to be more dollars into the industry, which means the rising tide lifts everyone, including this podcast and including across the board. Everybody benefits when more and more sponsorship dollars get engaged. So that to me is by far the biggest win.
But on this one in particular, it went to freaking charity. Yeah. My goodness. Listen, I know that there's a lot of magic that we reveal here on the show, and sometimes we don't reveal magic. But I'm curious, George, who was playing Leatherface? Can you tell us?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Can you text me later?
Oh, for sure. And you're not the first person that's asked me that.
Well, I'll tell you this. I loved the look and the presentation of it. I know it was silly, but I knew it was fun. But maybe one of my favorite things, besides Jay Lethal in a cowboy boots, and besides Sanjay in a Western shirt, can we just throw that picture up there again? Look at Satnam Singh. Satnam looks like he's right out of a horror movie, and all he's got is just one of the snaps done on the overalls. If that became his new look, I mean, I'm for it. He looks like he's right out of Men in Black or something.
Look at his face. And there was Conrad, the last time I was in Bridgetown, was that the last time me and you were there for another promotion? Anyway,
Yeah.
it was, but that was obviously a different day. But last Wednesday was one of the, arrived at the building at noon, and we never slowed down. There was a lot of moving parts. But Satnam, there's so many moving parts, but I'm like, and if he could have been, I'll just say, in a makeup chair, that was all done in under 10 minutes. I'm like, hey man, can you put some, a buddy of mine who was sitting second row, he just told me that he could not quit talking about it. He said, Satnam Singh is the biggest human being I've ever seen. He said, Jeff, he made you look tiny in your,
yes.
But yeah, anyway. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Conrad, and we've said this on there, at this stage in my career, to get to be involved in that type of integration and on that level, from not just the in-ring part, I'm talking about from the business perspective.
Yes.
Connie, I'll just say this. My dad would be grinning from ear to ear just on the integration part. I mean, that's because it's business. So
it's a vote of confidence in you. And it shows, respectfully, at this stage of your career, you got to think, man, I'm playing with house money. I mean, this is just a real honor and opportunity and blessing to be here. I mean, when you and I started this podcast, you thought, well, I'm an executive. I'm not doing matches. I mean, promoters were hitting you up all the time, and you're like, no, I mean, I'll come wave and do autographs, but I don't do that anymore. And now here you are in a video integration in prime time on Turner, destroying Jeff Hardy.